Good evening and welcome to Horror Time. This is another episode of Scary Stories to fall asleep to. Before we get into tonight's episode, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. And now, without further ado, tonight's story. My Gram's House by LVL Tristo, VA from Reddit, /True Scary Stories. These stories are all real accounts of things that happened to me and my family. Reading the posts here, I started to remember these events, so I apologize for the scattered order. One day, when I was 20, I was vacuuming my grandma's hallway. I was right in front of the yellow room where my uncle would later pass away from a heart attack when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I also felt someone blow through my hair, making it fly forward into my face. The only other person home at the time was my grandma, who was in the kitchen. She was wheelchair-bound and a devout Christian, not the type to play pranks or try to scare me. Before my family moved in, about 3 years before the above incident, I was helping them paint some of the house. I took a break to read a book in that yellow room, lying on the floor with my head facing the open door. I heard my dad go out to the car, or garage, so I knew I was alone in the house. Moments after he left, the door to the yellow room abruptly slammed shut, and when I looked up from my book, I saw a red-headed woman hanging in the closet to the right of the door. 6 years after this incident, my uncle had a heart attack and was found lying with his eyes wide open in front of that closet. 4 years later, my grandmother passed away in the room next to the yellow room. At one point before my uncle passed, my grandma asked me if I ever felt the need to call upon the name of Jesus in her house. I'm not religious, but I took it to mean, have you ever felt unsafe and afraid here? I told her about what I had seen in the closet before they moved in. All the color drained from her face, and her eyes widened as if they could fall out of their sockets. In a hushed voice, as if she feared someone would hear her, she told me, "The red-headed woman runs naked through my room screaming when I try to sleep. She had me pray with her, and we never mentioned it again." As her health began to decline, my sister and her kids moved in. The kids were offered the yellow room, without knowing what I had seen, or that their great-uncle had died there. But they both refused, and were terrified of going down that hallway. My sister stayed in that room for a while, and I believe she was at the height of her chronic depression then. My nephew, now a preteen, finally worked up the courage to move into that room. He keeps odd hours, and while the door still closes by itself, according to him, it never slams shut. My niece was terrorized by a pale, black-haired woman in the hallway bathroom. She's the only person in the house who has mentioned seeing a woman with black hair, and it's been a few years since she last spoke of her. The air vent is near that yellow room, and I tried to convince myself that the AC had come on, causing my hair to fly into my face. But when I checked, the thermostat showed the air conditioner wasn't running, and the fan wasn't even on. I can't remember exactly when this happened, but I was hanging out with my aunt in her room, down the same hallway but at the opposite end. We were chatting when her low ponytail suddenly flipped forward over her head and slapped her in the face. I saw it fly up, and she didn't make any movement to cause it. It was as if someone had slapped the underside of her ponytail. Surprisingly, we never had the house cleansed of spirits. My grandma was devout, but by the time they moved to Virginia, she would watch church services on TV and didn't belong to a church community that could provide that kind of help. The 4th of July, after my uncle passed, I was using the restroom near the dining room, at the opposite end of the house from the bedrooms and hallway. Everyone else was outside, either at the grill or doing firework inventory. I distinctly heard the disembodied voice of my late uncle call my name. He had a very distinct voice, deep and unsettling. I was afraid of him when he was alive because he was an addict with erratic and often violent outbursts. Recently, my mom told me that when my uncle still lived in New York, he would write me letters. I couldn't read or write yet. Eventually, he started sending creepy letters asking why I never wrote back, why I didn't want to play with him, and saying it hurt his feelings and made him upset and angry. I'm so glad she didn't tell me about this until after he died, but it still scared the living hell out of me. I sent this story to my niece, and she said that whenever they talk about what they've seen in the house, the lights flicker. She also said she had a dream where our grandma came back, but she looked different. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Horror Time. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more videos. Have a great evening, stay safe, and good night.